At 83 years old, Daniel walked hand in hand with his first love to Sandra's hospital bed to announce their relationship. "After you leave, I want to marry her." With one last breath, Sandra's life ended at the age of 76. 3 months later, they held a grand wedding. When she opened her eyes again, she returned to 3 months before her heart attack. This time she decided to die in different places from him, never to meet again. Chapter 1. Sandra, what time is it? Get up and make breakfast. Why have you become so lazy? After a deathly silence, Sandra suddenly woke up, her heart racing as if gripped tightly by an invisible hand. Tears on her face, sweat pouring down. Standing by the bed, Daniel was somewhat at a loss at her appearance. "What's wrong with you? Why are you crying for no reason? It's time to cook." Everything around her remained the same, the scene shifting from illusion to clarity. This was the place where she had lived since childhood, with fresh flowers picked from the flower bed placed on the vanity, and the occasional sounds of insects and birds from outside felt so real. When the urging voice sounded again, Sandra finally realized that she had been reborn, returning to 3 months before her heart attack. Looking at the familiar yet strange face beside her, Sandra was filled with anger. "I want to eat what I made myself." Daniel stared blankly for a moment, as if somewhat unexpectedly helpless, shaking his head, sighing. What's the point of getting angry? Watching his departing figure, Sandra could no longer hold back, covering her face and weeping. 3 months ago, she suffered a heart attack. Daniel held Rose's hand and walked to her bedside to declare his love. "Sandra, Rose said she wanted your blessing, and after thinking it over, I believe I should tell you that after you leave, I want to marry her." Unable to catch her breath, Sandra passed away just like that, her life ending at the age of 76. 3 months later, 83-year-old Daniel married 77-year-old Rose. With drums and gongs, and colorful lights, the two elderly people, with white hair, dressed in wedding attire, got married amidst a crowd, even trending on social media for a time. A reunion that spans half a century. "The person I liked when I was young is finally the one I brought home." No one mentioned his original partner, with whom he had shared a life of military service. Even the children who opposed their marriage were driven out of the house by Daniel, severing their parent-child relationship. The poor younger son became homeless, moving from one place to another, while the daughter lived in hardship, working 2 jobs to support the family. And Daniel handed over his entire salary card to Rose. Rose's daughter, however, inherited the empire built by Sandra and Daniel. Sandra looked at everything in the darkness. Despair and anger surged like a tidal wave, almost drowning her. She gasped for breath, her fists clenched, her nails digging deep into her flesh. Seemingly unable to feel the pain, she tried to break free from the suffocating fear. When she opened her eyes again, she found herself back 3 months before the onset of the illness. Heaven has given her another chance. Even if it is only for 3 months, it is enough. Gathering her thoughts, Sandra stepped out the door. The peonies and bellflowers in the yard looked particularly beautiful. In her previous life, she had tended to the little garden for several years, elegant and exquisite. But Rose had destroyed all her hard work just because she had said she didn't like it. Before long, Daniel returned from his walk, standing next to Rose. "Sorry, sister-in-law. I ran into Daniel while walking in the southern garden, and he insisted on inviting me to his home." Rose, with a charming smile and hair as white as flowers, she walked into the house with a lively spirit, chatting and laughing as if no one else was around. Sandra lives in the north, while Rose resides in the south. Their encounter was truly a coincidence. In the last life, Rose often visited her home, but Sandra never thought much of it. Who would have imagined that in their old age, they would still reminisce about such romantic affairs? Sandra remained silent, turned around, and called out, "Big Yellow." Suddenly, a golden retriever with a beautiful coat of yellow fur dog leaped out of the house, barking wildly at the door. Rose was taken aback, tightly gripping Daniel's sleeve, feeling wronged. "Daniel, is sister-in-law not welcoming me? Then I might as well leave." Sandra ignored them, continuing to tend to her little garden, while Big Yellow happily trotted beside her, gently wagging his tail. Watching Rose leave, Daniel felt a bit confused. Are you doing this on purpose? I met her while walking in the park and invited her to come over to my place for a visit. Sandra remained silent, perhaps sensing her displeasure. He sighed as if he had compromised. Fine. If you don't like it, I won't let her come over anymore. The next morning Daniel went out for a walk as usual, but he did not return for a long time. It was not until Sandra brought out the last dish that he pushed open the courtyard door. Haven't you eaten? Don't wait for me. I'm not hungry. With just a glance, she saw the grease at the corner of his mouth that had not been wiped clean. He must have eaten out, which surely meant he had dined with Rose. From home to the southern park for a stroll and a meal. This was about the time he would arrive home. This was because she knew Sandra did not like Rose, so he went out to meet her. She remained silent and began to eat breakfast alone. She was grateful for the chance to wake up once more. In the past, she had only focused on the children and the old man, never paying attention to her own feelings. Now, even a fried dough stick or a bowl of soy milk, chosen according to her own preferences, felt precious. It was as if a pair of gentle hands were gradually smoothing the waves within her heart, allowing her to quietly enjoy the tranquility of the moment. Daniel was sprawled on the sofa, fiddling with his phone, unsure of who he was chatting with. His aging body was still able to operate his fingers with agility, while a smile lingered at the corners of his mouth. It no longer mattered to her who she chatted with, until the moment of life and death, when she finally understood what was important. This time, before her life came to an end, she wanted to make arrangements, ensuring that her loved ones would not suffer while her enemies rejoiced. After dinner, Sandra returned to her room, took out her long-unused computer, logged onto the official website for organ donation management in China, and filled out the registration information for body donation. After filling it out, Sandra began to tidy up the photos from the years she had spent, not leaving a single one behind. A fire pit was set up in the yard, and she sat beside it, tossing stack after stack of photos into the flames, with Daniel by my side for a lifetime. The photos piled thick in bundles, from the time we fell in love in our youth, to the gentle flow of time in middle age, and then to the three-person household after having children, until in our old age we still rely on each other. There are not thousands but certainly hundreds of memories. Memories unfold like scenes replayed in a movie. The one of her in a white dress leaning on his shoulder was taken when they had just fallen in love. Her brow relaxed, her eyes clear and bright, her smile gentle. He said his favorite was when Sandra wore a white dress with her hair in braids, pure and lively. For many years to come, Sandra's favorite dress remained white, until he found a photo of a girl in a white dress in his scrapbook. Sandra asked. Daniel stammered, only saying that she was just the neighbor's little sister. Later, when she fell ill, Daniel led Rose to her bedside. The familiar white dress and outline were exactly that of the girl in the photo, and he suddenly understood. Rose came home countless times, but she never noticed until the moment they held hands and she announced they were together. Sandra could only sob and say nothing. Later, she never had the chance to say what she wanted to say. They announced it officially. She has passed away. The flames in the yard finally caught Daniel's attention. He hurried over, still thinking about rescuing some of the photos that hadn't completely burned in the fire pit. He burned his hand badly and exclaimed, "What are you doing? These are all our memories." His eyes were filled with regret. The photos have all yellowed. If we leave them any longer, they'll attract bugs. Let's just take new ones later. Perhaps realizing that Sandra had a point, he fell silent, merely muttering, "What a pity. So many photos. So many memories." The firelight flickered as the two returned to the living room, where the only sound was the clinking of teacups against the table. Daniel glanced quietly at Sandra. "Sandra, why don't you come with me to South Park tomorrow? It's really lively in the morning. You can go by yourself. I've made breakfast, and it's already 7 or 8 o'clock. You can't always eat out." Caught off guard, Daniel felt a bit awkward. Just as he was about to explain, the phone rang, and it was Rose's voice. "Daniel, I have some pain in my chest. Can you come over?" He could almost imagine how pitiful Rose must sound on the other end. With a furrowed brow, perhaps fearing that Sandra would misunderstand, he hurriedly explained, "I'll be back soon. Her daughter is out of town, and she needs someone to take care of her. I didn't expect that at nearly 70. Daniel could still walk briskly. Just as he was away, Sandra simply packed some daily necessities and booked herself a ticket for a free trip to the water towns of Jiangnan on her phone, as she was too old for group tours, which would have caused quite a bit of trouble. The next day, after breakfast, when she was about to leave, Daniel still hadn't returned, but it didn't matter. She had long since stopped caring. After living half a lifetime and dying once, she realized that true feelings can change in an instant. In the time she had left, she wanted to treat herself well. When the plane landed, she received a message from Daniel. "Sandra, where have you gone? Why aren't you back yet?" The evening buzzed again. "Are you sulking and planning to run away from home? At your age, what are you doing?" Sandra directly set her messages to do not disturb. Since she had come to the beautiful town of Jiangnan, she decided to enjoy this moment and not think about trivial and messy matters anymore. This place is truly wonderful, with a suitable temperature, blue stone tiles, and a light morning mist enveloping it, resembling an ink wash painting, with small bridges, flowing water, and quaint houses along the ancient path where the west wind blows and thin horses roam. She found a famous local qipao shop and chose a dark green qipao for herself, holding an oil paper umbrella and wearing small high heels. Although she was older, her figure was still very good, and with her tall and fair complexion, she walked gracefully through the town, exuding a gentle and serene aura. Sandra took a rather artistic photo of herself, in which her face appears kind and peaceful. The fan in her hand is adorned with elegant orchids, reflecting her refined and gentle nature. She posted it on her social media with the caption, "Even when life comes to an end, one must strive to love and cherish oneself." In his youth, Daniel promised that after retirement, he would take her traveling everywhere. However, once he actually retired, he became engrossed in taking walks at South Park every day. Whenever the topic of traveling the country came up, he would just smile and say, "At my age, let's not complicate things." Now she must fulfill her own dreams and enjoy herself to the fullest. On the second day, the third day, Daniel texted her every day, but she never replied. On the fourth day, he sent a photo of the yard filled with blooming flowers. "Sandra, the flowers in the yard are radiant, just like you were in your youth. Come back. I need you, and these flowers need you too." On the fifth day, he sent a photo of his solitary dinner, the lazy glow of the sunset spilling over the old wooden table, stretching his shadow long. The bowl of white porridge steamed warmly, yet the taste seemed to carry an indescribable loneliness. Daniel's face also bore deep marks. He was very handsome in his youth, standing out in the crowd like a crane among chickens. With just one glance, Sandra was captivated, knowing that her life would be forever intertwined with his. Was it a bit cruel to seek revenge on him? He was just an elderly man. On the sixth day, the phone was unusually quiet. Sandra only found it amusing. Does he really think his persistence will last just 5 days? It's good, leaving me in peace and freedom. Still no message from Daniel in the evening. Sandra lay on the king-size bed and casually opened the home camera, which the children had installed for them, just so they could see their parents at any time. The yard was brightly lit. Sandra looked closely and saw Rose in her usual rocking chair, while Daniel was sitting beside her, sipping hot tea. Under the moonlight, they seemed like an old couple enjoying the tranquility of life. At this moment, it would be a lie to say she didn't feel hurt, although she didn't want to care. He was, after all, someone she had lived with for a lifetime, married to Daniel when she was young. He was her faith, for her family, for her husband, for her children. She thought it was love at first sight, a bond stronger than gold. But after weathering storms, her beliefs collapsed like a house of cards, as if mocking her entire life. Tears streamed down uncontrollably. Sandra turned off her phone and curled up in her warm cup, soon feeling drowsy. With the lights off, the room was pitch black. The next day, while she was on a boat tour with the group, she received a call from her daughter, whose voice was choked with emotion. "Mom, are you not home? Did something happen?" Girls always have delicate feelings. Perhaps she saw something in the video. To reassure her daughter, Sandra feigned ease. "Nothing's wrong. I'm just traveling in Jiangnan and have met a lot of new friends. What else does the daughter want to say? She didn't say it out loud. Instead, it was Sandra who said, "By the way, let's go home and take a look in a few days. I have some things to give you." Okay. The two agreed and hung up the phone. On the boat, Sandra opened the video from home. No wonder. The daughter called him. Rose had already settled in. In the quaint little courtyard, Daniel sat in the rocking chair, while Rose posed and sang kunku opera in front of the flower bed, her every frown and smile delicate and affected. Daniel listened happily, clapping his hands in rhythm. Turning off the video, Sandra curled her lips in self-mockery. The month-long trip was coming to an end quickly as she pulled her suitcase home in the evening. In the living room, Rose and Daniel were having dinner at the table, one bowl for her and one bowl for him. Suddenly, Sandra's unexpected arrival felt like an intruder breaking the atmosphere. Daniel hurriedly stood up. Rose has been unwell, and her daughter hasn't returned yet, so I had to bring her over. You sit down. I'll get you some food. Ignoring him, Sandra walked straight into the bedroom. Upon entering, she was stunned to see neatly folded women's pajamas on the bed that didn't belong to her, and the vanity was filled with bottles and jars that clearly weren't her cosmetics. The things that belonged to her were scattered in a cardboard box, carelessly thrown at her feet. She frowned, turned, and left the bedroom, looking towards Daniel. Daniel paused for a moment, as if recalling something. I let Rose stay in the master bedroom after she came over. Anyway, you're not here. Don't worry. I've been sleeping in the guest room these past few days. So, he just lets other old ladies sleep in my bed? Seeing that she didn't respond, Daniel hesitated for a moment and then said, I'll pack her things up right now and move them to the guest room. As he spoke, he opened the master bedroom door and began to tidy up. Rose walked over at that moment, her disdain evident in her eyes. Daniel was too busy packing her things to notice outside. She leaned over to Sandra's ear and said, If you have the ability to leave, then don't come back. Daniel has been so happy with me these days. I am Daniel's first love. A man never forgets his first love. You don't know, do you? A few years ago, he found me. Without love, you can be a couple, but without love, you definitely can't be lovers. Who do you think he loves more? A trace of mocking laughter appeared at the corner of Rose's eye. Then she shouted into the room, Daniel, I think I should leave first. You don't need to worry about my illness. I can take care of myself. Hearing the shout, Daniel hurried out, casting an annoyed glance at me. At my age, it's not good to be alone. No, Daniel, sister-in-law probably doesn't welcome me either. After all, this isn't my home. Rose clutched her chest and slowly walked away, leaving Daniel to sigh and clean the dining table. Forget it. I don't want to argue with him. A few days later, the daughter came back, and as soon as she entered, she grabbed Sandra's hand. Mom, where's Dad? Dad went to South Park. The daughter's eyes glistened with tears. Just as she was about to speak, she was stopped by Sandra. Parents' matters are beyond the control of their children. In the end, I don't want them to worry as well. She took out the jewelry she had collected over the years, a pair of gold bracelets symbolizing the dragon and phoenix, which her mother had given her when she got married, along with several gold necklaces and earrings that Daniel had given her on her birthdays and anniversaries over the years. Although they were all old styles, these vintage pieces carried significant weight. These things together are worth at least 100,000. She gave all of them to her daughter, knowing the hardships her daughter faced. Additionally, she kept some cash for her own expenses for the next 2 months and gave it all to her daughter. By the way, this old house was left to me by your grandfather, and I've left it to your brother. He can either keep it or sell it. It's up to him. He is the pillar of the family, and the pressure is always greater on him. So don't think too much about it. The daughter understood the meaning behind her words, as if they were a dying wish, and tears flowed uncontrollably. The forced smile and feigned ease in her mother's eyes only made her heart ache more. When Daniel returned, the daughter was already gone. Only the neatly arranged nutritional supplements and fruits in the living room proved that she had been there. Has the daughter come back? Yes. Why didn't she tell him that the daughter had come back? Usually, Sandra cares the most about reunion days. Recently, She has been acting very strangely, traveling alone, sitting at the dining table alone for meals. In the past, she was the most timid, never daring to go out alone. Inexplicably, Daniel felt a bit anxious. He moved his lips, wanting to chat with Sandra about something, but seeing her lack of interest, he fell silent. 2 days later, Sandra independently transferred the house, giving it to her son. Speaking of this house, it used to be the old residence of the Lin family, as she was the only daughter of the Lin family. After her parents passed away, their family continued to live here, so it has always been in Sandra's name, until Daniel received a call from his son. Dad, why do you and Mom want to transfer the house? After completing the paperwork, Sandra sat in the living room, leisurely munching on an apple. Sandra, what happened? Why did you transfer the house to your son? He was panting heavily, clearly having rushed back in a hurry. It's nothing. We're getting older, so we need to plan ahead. Sooner or later, it will all go to them, so it's better to prepare early, just in case something happens to us. He nodded slightly. All right. Sandra's words made his heart tighten. He had never thought about what-ifs. Thinking carefully, they were both of this age, having lived half their lives, with children and a comfortable retirement that others envied. When did things start to feel a bit different? Sandra's unusual behavior always lingered in his mind, as if she was hiding something. Strangely, Daniel also felt a bit anxious. Could it be that she was ill? He instinctively spoke up. Sandra, are you feeling unwell? How about I accompany you for a checkup tomorrow? Sandra calmly said. No need. I'm fine. Recently, he seems to understand her less and less. She doesn't inquire about his daily activities, doesn't care whether he has breakfast, and tends to her garden as usual. Yet she always feels something is strange about him. For a moment, the two sat silently facing each other in the living room. Daniel fell silent for a moment, unable to hold back as he said, Sandra, we are not just lovers, but also family. If anything happens, you must tell me. Don't try to bear it alone. He wanted to say that he still cared for her, but after she left, he went on to marry another woman with great fanfare. Even though she was still unmarried, even though their children opposed it, he still cast aside his vows to Sandra. So, how much of his true heart is there? No one knows. After that day, he no longer went to South Park for evening strolls. Instead, he always lingered in front of Sandra. While she cooked in the kitchen, he would start the fire, boil water, chop vegetables, and fetch bowls. While she was shoveling dirt in the yard, he would water the flowers. In the morning, he would at most walk to the front gate, turn around, and come back. The two of them were busy yet harmonious, as if the time of mutual love had returned once more. During this time, his phone kept ringing. After pressing it several times, he finally turned it off. He picked up the morning newspaper and said to Sandra, our country won again in table tennis. Truly the national sport. These kids don't lose to the veterans, especially Fan Jindong, with his righteous face. I see many young girls are quite fond of him. Sandra didn't say anything. He thought she was still angry because he kept checking on Rose. Sandra, Rose is all alone here. I'm just looking after her. If you don't like it, I won't take care of her anymore. Sandra coldly laughed. I don't dislike it. I know you just want to look after her. That's all. He sensed the meaning behind the words. Daniel's expression froze, and he couldn't utter a single word. Sandra smiled. You can also bring her home. I don't mind. I can even give up the master bedroom. He gasped, his hand holding the newspaper trembling slightly. His dirty and vile thoughts, no matter how well concealed, could not deceive his own eyes. Gazing into the distance, Sandra softly spoke. Daniel, do you remember how we met? Daniel also set down the newspaper, his gaze deep. That year, he had just gone through a breakup. Wandering aimlessly down the street, at a corner, a girl in a white dress with braided hair entered his line of sight. The girl had fair skin and a radiant smile, reminiscent of his recent ex, Rose. But no, she was even more delicate than Rose. She was about to leave, and he hurriedly chased after her. A heart-wrenching emotion unfolded just like that. In the early years, she was strong and he was weak. Sandra came from a good family, while he was just a rural boy starting out. However, Sandra was willing to fully support him in developing his career, preferring to stay at home to be a good wife and mother, raising children. Decades have passed in the blink of an eye. The once charming girl now has a face marked by the traces of time. He thought that the two of them would walk to the end together, until the end of life, supporting each other through thick and thin. But that day in South Park, he encountered Rose, his first love. His long quiet heart stirred like a tranquil lake disturbed by ripples. He thought he had hidden it well, but it was still discovered. From Sandra's recent distance, he knew he had been discovered. He wondered if Sandra was a substitute for Rose, coincidentally filling the emotional void left after breaking up with Rose. But as she gradually distanced herself and exhibited strange behaviors, he realized that after years of companionship, he had long been unable to part with Sandra. Some people lightly stir the calm heart, while others are etched in the bones, impossible to let go. When he came to his senses, Sandra had already returned to her room. Daniel gently knocked on the door. Sandra. There was no response, so he had no choice but to return to the living room. That night, Daniel sat on the sofa all night. He was awakened in the morning by a series of urgent knocks on the door. Daniel, Daniel, Rose sobbed, her wrinkled face appearing oddly out of place due to her soft, petulant demeanor. Daniel opened the gate, and she rushed into his arms. Daniel, why haven't you been answering my calls? I've been waiting for you to reach out. You promised you would take care of me. Sandra stood at the door, coldly watching everything unfold, while Daniel awkwardly pushed Rose away from his embrace, saying, Rose, if you're not feeling well, you should call the child. It's not good to be alone. Rose looked at him in surprise. Daniel, what are you saying? You are not going to care about me anymore. Rose glared at Sandra with resentment, then cried pitifully. Fine, I don't need you to care. If Misty won't care for me, then neither will you. Just let me die from this illness. She ran away crying, and Daniel wanted to chase after her but was torn by the person in front of him. Sandra, I'll be right back. I'm really worried something might happen to her. In the end, he still chased after her. Tears fell unknowingly. The once thought indestructible barrier of his heart was fragile at this moment. Daniel, this is the last time I will cry for you. The frequency of the tightness in her chest became increasingly frequent. She knew this was a sign of an impending illness. Breathing became difficult and heavy, and the feeling of suffocation made her realize she was a dying person. Calming her emotions, Sandra prepared a lavish breakfast by herself, sharing many delicious dishes. A sudden ringing broke the tranquility of the morning. Hello, may I ask if you are Sandra? This is the local Red Cross. We have received your application for body donation on our official website, and we are here to inform you that in 3 days, please bring the printed materials to complete the donation registration process and receive your donation certificate and card. Okay, I will definitely go to pick it up on time. What are you going to pick up? Just as she was about to hang up the phone, Daniel's voice suddenly sounded behind her, and Sandra hurriedly hung up the phone. It's nothing. She casually brushed him off, not wanting to waste words. Daniel felt inexplicably anxious. 3 days quickly passed, and just as Daniel was heading out, Sandra took the materials to the local Red Cross to complete the procedures. As she came out, she happened to see Daniel shopping with Rose. She walked ahead while he followed behind, looking inseparable, watching them with cold eyes. Sandra felt no stirrings in her heart. Dealing with these matters took another month, leaving her with less and less time. Flipping through the calendar, only 1 month was left. She had no time to argue with them. After a long time, she met an old friend. 3 stylishly dressed old ladies drove through the countryside to the bustling city, attracting the attention of passers-by. Look, what a cool grandma. I want to be like this when I grow old. Awesome. No matter the age. Long live happiness. While waiting for the red light, a young driver rolled down the window and asked, Grandma, is driving okay? The others exchanged smiles. No problem. I've been driving for decades. Grandma's pension isn't low, right? It's enough to eat, drink, and have fun. A few old friends secretly went on a road trip without telling their families. visiting their elementary school to reminisce about childhood. The swings they once played on had long disappeared. Back then, happiness was simple. A popsicle was enough to satisfy them. They also visited their high school, the place where they had fought together. Countless days and nights spent quietly working towards their dreams. They still remembered the brightly lit study room and the sound of pens scratching against paper, having experienced both success and failure together. Although time has passed, there are still moments when I inadvertently think back. In the blink of an eye, decades have gone by, and everyone has become grandmothers, carefree on the road. The next day, the internet is flooded with their trending topics. The enviable life of the elderly, the happy lives of old friends. I never expected that in my lifetime I could become an object of admiration online. I can't express how happy that makes me. Throughout the journey, Sandra didn't tell them she was going to die. When old friends meet, it's all about joy. Why discuss life and death? For this lifetime, she would accompany them to this point. A few days later, Sandra returned home, and Daniel was anxiously pacing back and forth in the living room. Why are you back so late? At your age, you should know better. It's dangerous to drive out like that. She looked at him coldly. There's nothing to worry about. I know what I'm doing. Time flew by, and only a few days remained until her illness would strike. That night, Sandra sent messages to her son and daughter, telling them she missed them. In truth, she wanted to see them one last time, fearing she might never see them again. A few days later, both her son and daughter returned home, enduring discomfort. I prepared a table full of dishes they loved. The son ate with his mouth full, and the daughter kept saying how delicious it was, constantly offering comforting words. After dinner, the family sat in the living room, brewing tea by the fire, reminiscing about their childhood, with bursts of laughter occasionally drifting out from the living room, making Sandra feel as if they were happily together like before. Sandra wore a pair of reading glasses, holding a yellowed photo album, flipping through the pages one by one, occasionally tapping her daughter's nose with her finger, her eyes filled with tender smiles. You were so beautiful as a child. Every time I took you out, everyone would stop and stare. The daughter smiled slightly, two small dimples shallowly imprinted on her cheeks. It's still because of Mom and Dad's good genes. Sandra was amused and pointed to another photo, saying, "Look at your brother. He was quite mischievous since he was little." The smile at the corner of her mouth lingered for a long time. A gentle breeze blew in. Sandra looked into the distance, her eyes filled with love. Now, both the son and daughter have entered their 50s, shedding their youthful innocence, becoming steady and mature, each with their own families and careers. Holding their hands, she felt an indescribable satisfaction in her heart. No matter what, every little memory from the past felt like a happy experience. But Daniel kept fiddling with his phone, frowning one moment and glancing towards the door the next. Sandra pretended not to see and couldn't be bothered, but their daughter couldn't hold back. "Dad, is there something urgent? Why are you so restless?" "No, nothing." Yet his gaze remained anxiously fixed on the door. After another minute, Daniel suddenly stood up. "I need to step out for a bit. You two stay with your mom." The daughter's expression changed little by little. "Dad, today is family day. My brother and I rarely come back. Do you really have to go out? What's so important?" Daniel left without a moment's pause, leaving behind a sentence. "You don't understand. I'll be back soon. It's important. You all take good care of your mom at home. She's been mentioning you two a lot these days." Tears welled up in her daughter's eyes as she looked at Sandra and held her tightly. The son froze. How long has my dad been like this? Sandra didn't know how to answer him. Maybe after retirement, or even earlier, or perhaps in this life. Sandra had only eaten a bowl of undercooked rice. The daughter and son both spoke up for her. Sandra only chuckled lightly and shook her head. Now he meant nothing to her, and it didn't matter where he went. Sandra gently stroked her daughter's head while sitting in the rocking chair, like all mothers do, worrying no matter how old their children are, concerned about whether she was eating well, sleeping well, and if there was enough money to spend. She also reminded her children about some matters, including the donation of her body. She took out the body donation card from a small package behind her and instructed them to contact the Red Cross to have her body transported when the time came. The daughter couldn't stop wiping her tears. "Mom, I want you to always be my mom." Sandra held her son's hand in one hand and her daughter's hand in the other. "Haven't I always been your mother? You must remember that death is not the end. I am just going ahead to prepare a home for you." In the latter half of the night, Sandra's condition was not good. She often gasped for breath. The children wanted to take her to the hospital, but she refused. She knew that the outcome would be the same whether she went to the hospital or not. She still wanted to stay in the place where she had lived her whole life. The children were all waiting by Sandra's bedside, and at that moment Daniel had not yet returned. Lying in bed, she couldn't help but glance towards the door a few times. It was as calm outside as it had been at night. The children exchanged glances, and then the son went outside to make a phone call, but after several attempts, it was always a busy signal, or it would connect only to be hung up immediately. He was so angry that he almost threw the phone. As he entered the house, the son subtly shook his head at his sister, but it was still caught by Sandra. She smiled bitterly, permanently closing her eyes. In the morning Daniel finally returned, holding a bag of steamed buns. "Here, your Aunt Sue specially made these for you, knowing that you probably haven't had breakfast at this time. Where's your mom?" Daniel completely failed to notice the sorrowful faces of the children. It was somewhat strange that he didn't see Sandra around, as she would usually cook for the kids even when she wasn't feeling well. "Is your mom not in the kitchen?" The daughter raised her crimson eyes. Daniel felt a sudden jolt in his heart. An ominous premonition surged within him. "What were you doing last night? I called you so many times. My mom has passed away." "Passed away?" His mind went blank. His eyes widened in confusion, and he looked at his son again in disbelief. "Yes. My mother passed away suddenly from a heart attack last night." Daniel shuddered involuntarily. His heart seemed to be yanked by some heavy weight, and he wandered aimlessly in place, looking around, trying to find Sandra's figure, but the surroundings were eerily quiet, as if the environment was telling him that this person was truly gone, that his wife of over 50 years had really left him. He cautiously moved towards their bedroom, wanting to see her one last time. He pushed the door open, and the bedding was neatly folded on the bed, but Sandra was nowhere to be seen. Daniel turned back in confusion. "Where is she?" The daughter lowered her head and said gloomily, "My mom signed the agreement to donate her body, and just now the body was taken away by the Red Cross hospital." Daniel plopped down on the chair, exuding an air of despair. Outside the yard Sandra was tending to the flower bed, where the flowers bloomed brilliantly, dazzling and vibrant, as if their colors could blind his eyes. He coldly looked towards the place where she used to appear, tears streaming down his face. "Sandra, does it really have to be this way? Do you really hate me this much?" Last night Rose sent him another message, crying and lamenting that no one was taking care of her, insisting on finding him, not wanting her children to know about his disgrace. He left late at night. He just wanted to clarify things with her, that from now on, she should handle her own matters, and he wouldn't go to South Park anymore, nor would he leave Sandra to take care of her. Rose used the excuse of the last companionship to stay with him, but this time, she didn't even get to see her wife's final face. The few people in the room were all immersed in sadness. The steamed buns just brought back slowly grew cold, and Daniel's heart grew cold along with them. In this way, even though the children were heartbroken, they couldn't bear to blame him any further. Daniel was sitting in Sandra's rocking chair. The yard was arranged in a pleasing manner, all tended to by Sandra's hoe and rake. Sometimes he wanted to intervene, but Sandra put her hands on her hips and angrily said, "You're not helping. You're clearly causing trouble. Hey, don't step on the seedlings. Hurry up and get out. Hurry up and get out." At this moment Daniel would always smile foolishly, standing on the steps, watching her busy. Since when did he stop accompanying Sandra to plant flowers? It seems to have started when he went to South Park and ran into his first love, Rose. Every time she called out Daniel, he lost his way. He thought he was hiding it well. He just went to South Park every day to stroll with Rose and watch the old friends play chess. Occasionally, they would have breakfast together at a stall, enjoying soy milk and fried dough sticks. First love holds a different place in everyone's heart. She should be able to understand that. In fact, how could he not be clear about his own feelings? He just doesn't dare to admit it. In just a few days, his heart was in unbearable torment. After countless inquiries, he tried to comfort himself. Sandra just fell ill and didn't have the chance to see him one last time, and coincidentally wanted to donate her body. After all, no one can peer into another's heart. But the truth is just so cruel. Sandra was supposed to apply for body donation 3 months ago. The children knew, but he did not. Reflecting on the moments spent with Sandra, the abnormal details gradually come to light. Perhaps she had known all along, from his frequent fiddling with his phone, spending half the day lingering outside, or from the repeated visits of Rose. He thought that at his age of over 80, who would think much of it? But it is precisely because of his age that it becomes even more awkward. Daniel's vision blurred, tears streaming down. He should have known that after living together for 50 or 60 years, every move could not be hidden from his partner. Suddenly, it seemed he thought of something and picked up his phone to open the surveillance video. He once again fell into the rocking chair. In the video, he and Rose were smiling brightly. She was singing, he was keeping the beat, and Daniel clutched his chest, a wave of dull pain washing over him. The video clearly shows that Sandra had already checked it. He lowered his gaze, unable to deny that at over 80 years old he had developed a wandering heart. If it weren't for Sandra gradually distancing herself, he still hadn't faced his true feelings. He had to admit that he almost made a foolish decision. He had to admit that the one he loved the most in his heart was still Sandra. He hated himself to the extreme, and he also hated Rose. Daniel sat alone in the rocking chair, facing the flower bed, all alone in the vast yard, filled with loneliness, facing the afterglow of the setting sun. The last slanting ray of sunlight disappeared as the sun sank in the west. It seemed as if Sandra's enthusiasm for him was gradually dissipating. At that moment, Daniel got up and walked towards the bedroom. After rummaging through, he found a total of 5 photo albums, but not a single one of Sandra. He couldn't believe it and carefully searched a few more times, but still found nothing. He remembered that day Sandra burned so many photos in the yard. Daniel once again trembled as he opened Sandra's jewelry box, which was still empty. Looking around, her clothes and bedding had all been taken by the children to be burned. The place where she had lived her whole life had no trace of her at all. Even in death, she was unwilling to leave behind ashes for him to mourn. It was as if the person he shared a bed with had vanished into thin air, leaving no trace behind. He searched the house endlessly. Even a single photo would do. But he found nothing. Looking up at the vibrant flowers in the yard, that was Sandra's last touch of brilliance left for him. If only I hadn't gone to find Rose that night. I could have seen Sandra one last time. If only I could have stayed true to my heart, not thinking of romantic affairs in my old age. If only. Daniel sat in the living room, with only the clock ticking, marking the passage of time. Through these days and nights, he finally recognized the reality. Sandra was truly gone. He sat every day in the yard, in that rocking chair, admiring the flowers and plants that Sandra had planted in her lifetime. Having not gone out for a long time, it seems that her presence still lingers in the house. The children have also advised him to take care of his health. After all, he is not young anymore. But he couldn't hear anything. It seemed that only by doing this could he make up for the mistakes he had made. Every few days, the children would come back to see him, watching his gradually declining spirit, and then they would helplessly leave. If I had known today, why would I have acted this way back then? The children said, if my mom were alive, she wouldn't want you to torment yourself. Why must you do this? You're getting older, so don't be too melancholic. Their unintentional comfort, yet it only made him more painful. Even the children knew they were no longer young, but he still believed he was not old. Daniel watered the flowers every day, which became his only way to mourn Sandra. Sandra, look how delicate these flowers are. You took such good care of them when you were here. Sandra, you loved flowers and plants when you were young. You have always been a romantic person. Ah, you are truly heartless. Even if you hate me, you cannot erase all the traces. How am I supposed to remember you? Sandra, Daniel whispered. He thought his feelings were deeply hidden, but forgot that Sandra had already seen through him. She was never the type to compromise her principles. You can tell from her feelings towards herself. At first, when they were together, Sandra's parents did not approve. After all, their family was so well off, while Daniel was just a young lad. Even though he was very talented, they did not want their daughter to suffer hardships with him starting from scratch. Sandra fought hard, firmly choosing him, and boldly told her parents, "If you don't let me marry him, then you will never see me get married in this lifetime. I will take responsibility for my own choices." She has spent her entire life fulfilling this promise, watching over him, the children, and this home. Sandra has her own convictions. Choosing to live together means she must uphold it for a lifetime. Even in old age, she should not forget her original intentions. So it was Daniel who betrayed the vow. He couldn't imagine how desperate Sandra must have felt during that time. If she was all sticky and sweet with her first love, how would he have felt? Daniel's heart felt as if it were being slowly tortured. Darkness enveloped him, and he collapsed onto the bed. The next day, he slowly awakened to a series of knocks on the door. The sound of knocking on the door was accompanied by shouting, a noisy clamor, "Daniel, Daniel, are you home?" His eyes tightened, and a wave of self-reproach surged again. He originally didn't want to respond, but it seemed the person outside was determined not to give up. "Daniel, are you home?" Daniel Wang struggled to get up, still feeling a tightness in his scalp, and staggered to open the yard door. Without waiting for Daniel Wang to give way, Rose swaggered into the yard as usual, saying, "Misty, this is your Uncle Wang." Rose was accompanied by a heavily made-up woman, who, upon entering, surveyed the entire villa with a smile on her lips, her eyes filled with shrewd calculation. With a satisfied look, she finally withdrew her gaze from the surroundings and landed on Daniel. "Oh, Uncle Wang, I've heard my mom mention you. You were first loves, right? I heard your wife passed away. Now that you and my mom are of such an age, I agree with your relationship." Daniel furrowed his brows. It was better not to say anything, but upon hearing this, his head ached even more. His stern face grew even colder, surrounded by an atmosphere of grimness. You all, get out of here. You are not welcome." He almost had to use a big stick to drive them out. He pushed the mother and daughter outside and closed the door. "Hey, Sandra, I'm sorry to make you laugh at me again." Sandra, muttering to himself. A thought suddenly popped into his mind. He needed to find her. So, he went out. At the entrance of the local Red Cross hospital, a stubborn old man appeared. The staff told him that the person who donated the body had clearly stated they did not want to inform him of its whereabouts. He did not give up. If 1 day didn't work, then 2 days. If 2 days didn't work, then 3 days, sooner or later, he would move her. His stubbornness made the staff shake their heads. Daniel began his routine of early mornings and late nights, from dawn until dusk. In the house without the mistress at night, all was silent, only the occasional sound of the wind rustling the leaves outside, making a soft shushing noise. On the wooden table, a bowl of warm white porridge sat, steam rising and dissipating. No one left to share the simple warmth of daily life with him. After dinner, lying in bed, his arm brushed against the spot beside him. Slightly cool. The nights of the elderly are short. Before 4 o'clock, Daniel was already up. Today seemed a bit different. He actually felt the sparse sounds coming from the kitchen, initially thinking it was an illusion, until he heard the crisp sound of a spoon touching the edge of the bowl. He quickly got dressed, carefully pushing open the door. Afraid of startling the person in the kitchen, a familiar figure was busy in the kitchen, accompanied by steaming heat, and the aroma of food wafted through the room. Is Sandra back? It felt like a dream. If it is a dream, he hoped it would last a little longer. Gently pushing open the kitchen door, the surprise vanished in an instant. "You, Rose. How did you get in? And when did you come?" Rose skillfully took out the sweet and sour pork from the pot and placed it on the table. "Daniel, wash your hands and come eat." Daniel didn't move. "I asked how you got in." He could clearly feel his low pressure, but Rose remained calm. "You forgot. Last time you left a set of keys at my house. I let myself in." He trembled as he pointed at Rose, his eyes cold. "No matter how you got in, you need to leave." Rose calmly sat down and said, "Daniel, this time I'm not leaving so easily." Just as Daniel was about to explode, Misty burst in holding her phone, followed by a few people as the sky was dimly lit. The aged face looked displeased, as if it were twisted together, squinting slightly to see the visitor clearly, but it was always blurry. In the past, at this time, Sandra would always hand him those reading glasses. He was just a bit anxious earlier, and he didn't manage to bring it up. Rubbing his eyes hard with the back of his hand, he still couldn't see clearly until the visitor walked in. Misty looked around the interior of the house with her phone in hand, not giving Daniel any chance to get angry, muttering into her phone, "Family. My mom is 76 years old and has been bullied by that old man. It's him, who promised to marry my mom after his partner passed away. But now he's going back on his word. Poor my mom. She's been cooking for him every day during this time. Did you know? They were each other's first love, separated for decades, and only reconnected a few years ago. My mom has been foolishly waiting for him. Ming Ming, you promised to marry her. I can't let him hurt my mom twice." The people behind also echoed, "Right. At this age, how can he abandon her after starting?" Under Misty's embellishments, the emotions of the netizens were stirred up, and behind her were all the loyal fans she had summoned. They all demanded an explanation. Daniel stared wide-eyed, filled with rage, looking at Rose. Rose couldn't bear to meet his gaze. "Daniel, how can you betray me twice? You must give me an explanation today. Otherwise, I will go to your daughter and your son's workplace to make a scene." As more and more people gathered at the door to watch the commotion, Daniel found himself in a difficult position, sneering coldly. "Is what you say true? I have surveillance in my yard. We can check when you come every day and find out." Misty had already turned off the live stream, snorting coldly. "Uncle Wong, can you check if your surveillance is still working?" Frowning, Daniel walked to the door, only to find that the surveillance cameras had been completely removed. He had been out early and back late these days, and they must have taken advantage of his absence. He originally wanted to resist, but he was worried that Misty would really go to the children's workplace to cause a scene. It doesn't matter for him. He's old and worn out, but the children cannot be embarrassed along with him. In the end, Daniel still married Rose within 3 months of Sandra leaving. By the time the children learned the news, they had already obtained their marriage certificate. These are Rose's conditions for marrying him. First, they must obtain a marriage certificate, and second, they must hold a grand wedding. Originally, there was a third point. Rose and Misty did not have their own house, and they were going to move into his small villa. Daniel strongly opposed. He had already tarnished the feelings he had for Sandra and did not want any dirty aura to taint the place where Sandra had lived. They do not deserve to live here. Rose and Misty disagreed until his son took out the property deed. Only then did they reluctantly fall silent. The wedding was grand, with bright red tang suits and a wedding venue that showcased the man's regard for the woman. Misty was beaming with joy, while only Daniel could not bring himself to be happy. Thinking back to the time when he married Sandra, they simply dressed neatly and had a meal together, without any extravagant attire, just a promise that earned her a lifetime of devotion. Misty live streaming all the way, gaining 1 million followers in an instant. The comments on the bullet screen number in the hundreds. "No matter how old, love is necessary. I envy the Mandarin ducks but not the immortals. 60 years parting ways. 60 years finally bearing fruit. Blessings. May the 100-year promise finally come to fruition." After the clamor comes the terrifying silence. On a sunny day, Daniel packed his belongings and moved into the rental apartment with Rose. The cramped space seemed to imprison his heart as well. Every day felt lifeless. Rose was furious seeing him like this. "Who are you trying to impress? If it weren't for you saying you would take care of me for the rest of my days, I wouldn't even consider marrying you." Misty leaned against the door frame, gazing at the aging Daniel. He must be thinking about that dead ghost. His heart is completely not with you. "How old are you? Stop pretending to be infatuated." Rose went mad upon hearing this, continuously venting her frustrations. The room was filled with sounds of shouting and crying. Daniel closed his eyes, silently enduring it all. Sandra, if this is what I must endure, then I will accept it. If I can follow you sooner, that would also be a good thing. It is unknown how long it has been. Perhaps they were tired, and the noise finally came to an end. Only Rose's crying remained. Daniel sat beside her, saying nothing. In the past, when he was with Rose, she always appeared understanding, gentle, and gracious. But now, only mutual disdain remained. His silence once again infuriated Rose. Are you just waiting to see me make a fool of myself? If you want Sandra, why don't you just go with her? I thought marrying you would mean living in a big house and having a happy life, but I didn't expect you to be so useless. I really was blind. Daniel, his heart felt like it was being cut with a knife. He no longer wanted to hear her accusations. He went out with a cane. Now he was closer to South Park. Just stepping out was enough. Thinking back to a few months ago, he had specifically walked for an hour to come here, just to catch a glimpse of Rose. All these years, there has always been a place for his first love in his heart. At that time, Rose left him to be with a child of high-ranking officials. He was unwilling to accept it and vowed to make something of himself to make her regret it. Later, he met Sandra, and her presence filled the emotional void in Daniel. Yet, there was still a sense of loss in his heart, perhaps due to Rose's abandonment and his inferiority from coming from a rural background. Finally meeting again, Daniel's sense of superiority arose. He never thought about what to do with her, but Rose's tenderness and initiative made him fall into it. It's laughable that because of his own selfish desires, he lost the person he could have spent his life with. The person is gone, and now is the time for true tears without sorrow. Now that he is really with Rose, he feels no joy at all. This must be his retribution. That must be the old man who married his first love at over 80. Yes, that's him. Love above all. Truly enviable. What's there to envy? I truly feel sorry for the original partner. Every time I go out, there are many people pointing and whispering. Some good, some bad. Every time the original partner is mentioned, it feels like 1,000 arrows piercing my heart. It wasn't until dusk that Daniel finally returned home. You still know how to come back. Let me tell you, from now on, you'll have to cook breakfast and dinner. Misty is going live. I need to clean the house. You can't just eat and drink for free. This household doesn't support idlers. It felt like a bucket of cold water was poured over me from head to toe. Rose's dramatic change in attitude left Daniel at a loss. How did she become like this? How could she be so heartless? Even though he missed Sandra, she was dissatisfied. But at over 80 years old, why was she so cruel? Rose's sharp and sarcastic smile was unmistakable. Do you think this is still your little villa? This is a rental apartment. The days of living in luxury are over. Daniel's eyes gradually dimmed, as memories surged into his mind like a tide. Meeting together to stroll in South Park, having breakfast at the same place. Little tunes, white dresses. The scenes flashed by. Everything felt so absurd. On the first day of July, the sun was shining brightly, casting dappled light through the curtains onto the bedding. Daniel had packed up early. Today is his birthday, and ever since he had a chance encounter with Rose 2 years ago, she has surprised him with a birthday gift every year on this day. A dull life always needs a little surprise to wash it away. By 7 o'clock, Rose was still sleeping soundly without a hint of movement. He thought maybe she was too tired and was indulging in sleep. It was fine. There was no rush. By 8 o'clock, she finally woke up, her eyes still hazy from sleep. Seeing him sitting there in a daze at the foot of the bed startled her. What are you doing? You scared me to death. Rose. Today is my birthday. Rose rolled her eyes dramatically. So what if it's your birthday? At your age, who still celebrates their birthday? Are you tired of living? Daniel stood frozen in place, realizing that all her kindness had been mere pretense. How many foolish things had he done over the years? He took off his outer coat and walked into the kitchen helplessly, preparing breakfast. No one in this house mentioned his birthday. It wasn't until the afternoon that Daniel received a call from his son, the voice on the other end urgent, asking him to return to the villa. Thinking something had happened, Daniel quickened his pace. How many nights ago? He was also in such a hurry, leaving behind his sick son and daughter to meet his first love. Now, no one knows how much he wants to escape from there. As soon as he entered, he was stunned by the scene before him. The yard was adorned with warm, colorful lights, and the living room door, which held countless memories, was wide open, revealing his son and daughter, all smiling, gathered around the table, with a feast laid out before them. "Dad, happy birthday, Dad, happy birthday." The children wished together. This is Sandra's first birthday since she left. It was also his first time returning after leaving the villa. Daniel felt a slight redness in his eyes, his heart tinged with a bit of sorrow. "Be well, be happy." Grandchildren gathered around, chattering excitedly about their recent amusing stories. Laughter was crisp and pleasant. All the painful memories transformed into scenes of happiness. "Sandra, I really need to know what I did wrong. What a warm scene it was. But you are no longer here. It was my selfish desire that caused this once happy home to cease to exist." Daniel, the tears of regret had long since burst forth. Staring blankly at the empty rocking chair, his throat tightening, his children actually resented him, resenting his mental infidelity, resenting that at this age he could commit such incomprehensible acts, causing their mother to die with resentment. But no matter how much they resented him, they never abandoned him as their father. Sadness welled up in his eyes. The old banyan tree at the gate sprouted new buds again. Life continued as usual, but the woman who had toiled all her life was gone forever. In the evening, Daniel returned to the rental apartment, and as soon as he opened the door, he smelled a strong scent of gunpowder. He quickly put down the little airplane from his phone, changed his shoes, and walked into the kitchen to start preparing dinner for the two of them. 2 dishes and a soup. He brought them to the dining table and warmly invited them to eat. "Rose, Misty, come and eat. I came back a bit late today." Rose's expression darkened. "I know. Your family is happily celebrating a birthday. Who cares if my daughter and I are hungry?" "No, the children are just temporarily back." Not wanting them to ask any further, she ignored their words and hurriedly retreated into the house with her grandson's folded paper airplane. Misty complained while stuffing a piece of meat into her mouth. "I think Uncle Wang just never considered you family. In his heart, they have always been the family. You really have it tough. Not only were you abandoned by my dad when you were young, but you also caused my unhappy childhood. And now, in old age, you still can't escape the fate of being abandoned." Rose turned pale, put down her chopsticks, and soon a crisp slap echoed, followed by the sounds of wailing and cursing. The plates and bowls shattered all over the ground. Daniel sat quietly by the bed, not daring to make a sound. He knew that as soon as he stepped outside, all the anger would be directed at him. It was only when the outside had calmed down that he began to tidy up the mess in the living room. Rose was sitting at the dining table, her hands clenched into fists, her gaze complex and sharp, filled with both disappointment and anger. Misty then went back to the room to start the live broadcast. The dim yellow light divided the room into 2 halves. One side was a lively live broadcast, while the other was filled with a cold sadness. Daniel replaced the already cold tea with a freshly brewed cup of warm water, placing it in front of her, his brow furrowed. "Drink some water. Getting angry while eating is not good for your health." Rose cried out loud. "Why blame me? Blame me all you want. I didn't want to be abandoned either. Who knew he was a playboy? She had an unfortunate childhood. But what about my youth? Who is responsible for my youth?" With a loud bang, Misty slammed the door shut, leaving 2 people in the dim living room, each facing their own solitude. The rift between mother and daughter had reached an irreconcilable point, their hearts like that door that had been shut, growing further apart. Daniel comforted Rose and returned to his room. Lying on the soft bed, he reminisced about the joyful moments spent with his children today. If only Sandra were here, it would be much livelier. Every year, she would carefully prepare a feast, surrounded by her children and grandchildren. On this special day, he would be enveloped in warmth and love. He silently calculated in his heart, imagining the family gathered around the table, filled with laughter, with Sandra there, and the blessings from friends arriving as expected. But after Sandra passed away and he remarried, That group of old friends gradually cut off contact with him. This year's birthday is quietly cold, but at least the children still remember. Accompanied by beautiful expectations, Daniel fell into a deep sleep. The next morning, after preparing breakfast, Daniel sat in the living room, flipping through last year's birthday album, watching those captured moments where smiles, tears, and surprises intertwined, and the emotion surging in his heart came rushing back like a torrential rain. He really wanted to see Sandra, even if it was just a photo, but after flipping through the album, he couldn't find even a single shadow. Is this Sandra's way of getting back at him? Tears flowed down uncontrollably, drip drip falling onto the photo album. As soon as Rose opened the bedroom door, she saw the scene before her, and without thinking, she threw the teacup in her hand, making a loud crash as it smashed against the wall, shards flying everywhere, with one piece just grazing Daniel's eyebrow. He didn't expect it, and neither did she. A gruesome gash opened up, blood trickling down from the corner of his eye. Daniel looked at Rose with anger, but Rose showed no remorse, saying, "Every day you flip through that broken photo album, why don't you just ask them to bring you back? It seems you've had enough of this life too." She snatched the photo album and threw it on the ground, the photos sliding down onto the floor. Daniel's heart tightened. These were his treasures. He hurriedly bent down to pick them up, trying to salvage these fragments that carried memories, while Rose stomped on them, cursing as she went. I'll show you. If you don't want to live this way, then just get lost." The photos scattered on the ground were trampled beyond recognition, and Daniel's heart was filled with mixed emotions. He could no longer bear it. Ever since he married her, their children had grown distant, and old friends had also drifted away. These photos are all his thoughts. Although there are no Sandra's pictures, recalling those happy moments makes it seem as if he can still see her shadow. His beloved possession was trampled underfoot like this, and he could no longer hold back. "Fine. Let's go, Rose. You are really too much. I can leave, but give me back my salary card." Rose let out a cold laugh, as if she had heard some delightful joke. "What are you thinking? These days, you've been staying at my place, sleeping in my bed. Do you expect to stay for free? Consider this salary card as compensation for my emotional distress. If you want to leave, go ahead. Take your broken things and get lost. Don't even think about your salary card." Daniel was trembling all over, his deeply wrinkled face dull and lifeless. He had really had enough during this time. He stared at the old man in front of him, his back slightly hunched, and suddenly slammed the table, causing the utensils on it to tremble as well. "Okay, I'll leave right now." He stubbornly got up, walked to the room, took out his personal clothes from the cabinet, and returned to the living room, carefully putting away the photos one by one and packing the paper airplane his little grandson had brought back yesterday. If he leaves, he still has children and a villa he lived in for a lifetime. There is the presence of Sandra that once existed. He still needs to bring back De Huang from his son's house. And then it will be one person, one dog, and one roof. Just as he pushed open the door, Misty hurriedly chased after him, still not fully awake. "Where are you going? What are you all making noise about so early? I'm telling you, no one is allowed to delay my live stream for money. You are all celebrities now. I still rely on you to build my popularity, so no one is allowed to leave." Daniel didn't believe it. He wanted to leave, and she couldn't stop him. Ignoring everything, he walked towards the door. Misty pulled him back, lifting her foot to hook the door shut. "Old man, where are you going? I see you're refusing to drink the good wine and are asking for the bad." Misty kicked Daniel in the stomach, sending him sprawling on the ground, and he couldn't recover for a long time. She looked down at his embarrassment from above, coldly throwing out a warning. "Old man, I warn you, don't push me too hard. I'm someone who plays on the internet. Be careful I expose your son and daughter's workplace. Your wife has been heartbroken by you. You don't want to lose your son and daughter again, do you?" She walked past him and sat down at the dining table, eating breakfast by herself. The crushed paper airplane had changed shape, just like his heart, shattered piece by piece. Daniel couldn't help but let out a mournful cry in his heart. The retribution is relentless. The retribution is relentless. After a moment's pause, he forced himself to stand up, leaning on the chair beside him. At over 80 years old, a fall felt like it had taken half his life. It felt as if all the bones in his body were shattered with pain. Misty threatened him with the reputation of his children, and he didn't dare to act impulsively. Feeling resentful, he returned to his room. It wasn't until he took off his clothes at night that he noticed the bruises on his arms and thighs. But Misty didn't want to let him off the hook. In the middle of the night, just as he had fallen into a light sleep, he was pushed awake. "Hey, get up for the live stream. My family wants to see you. Put some energy into it." Dressed, he sat in front of the live stream with Rose, cooperating with Misty for the broadcast. The questions and the bullet comments were very sharp. "Will Mr. Wang remember your original partner? I am curious whether at this age one prefers new love or old love. What new love or old love? This is about the original partner and the first love. Of course, it's the first love. Otherwise, how could he have married his first love just a few days after the original partner died? They must have been in contact long before." It wasn't until the broadcast ended that Daniel finally woke up from his daze. For him, it was yet another sleepless night. He often thinks of his regretfully departed lover, every frown and smile still vivid in his mind. After moving from the villa where he had lived for half his life to a cramped rental apartment, he sat in the living room for half the night. This place has housed 2 generations of mother and daughter, and it feels quite crowded since he arrived. Daniel always starts his busy day facing the soft morning light from the east. Rose likes to eat millet porridge, and Misty prefers rice porridge with steamed buns, which he prepares and serves at the table. He simply took a bite and went out again. It was only after living together that he realized Rose actually didn't like getting up early. Those chance encounters in South Park seemed very deliberate, having been well taken care of by Sandra for an entire lifetime. Daniel, at over 80 years old, still had to serve others. This was the consequence of his mistakes. Daniel shakily arrived at the Red Cross hospital, sitting on the stone steps he usually occupied. As the staff hurried out to greet him, "Oh dear, Grandpa, why have you come again? Didn't I tell you not to come? We must respect the wishes of the donors." Tears had unknowingly carved deep lines down his weathered face. "Child, I am already over 80, nearing the grave. I just want to see my old partner before I pass. Please grant me this wish. Don't let me leave with regrets." It seemed he was moved, or perhaps it was seeing him so old. The staff thought for a moment, then turned and walked towards the office hall. After a while, they came out holding a file bag. "Grandpa, you take this. It's the information. Your partner's body has been sent to the medical school for anatomical research." Finally knowing Sandra's whereabouts, his steps involuntarily became light, and the murky light in his eyes reignited with anticipation. "Sandra, tomorrow, at the latest, I will come to see you." It was as if they were destined to meet again after crossing an entire century, and the excitement and anticipation in their hearts grew even stronger. Unknowingly, Daniel found himself back at the door of his old home. Pushing the door open, everything felt so familiar. Only the flowers in the yard had withered, lacking their owner's careful attention. He felt somewhat lost. After Sandra left, I couldn't even take care of her flowers, and tears filled my eyes. Ever since there have been no permanent residents here, each return feels so desolate, as if shrouded in a heavy layer of sadness. At night, it was slightly cool, and the moonlight filtered through the large banyan tree at the entrance, casting its glow on the empty expanse. He wrapped his collar tighter, yet could not dispel the chill. On the rocking chair at the door, he no longer sees the smiling face of his old partner, and the once ordinary days he took for granted have now become untouchable memories. Every morning when he wakes up, the kitchen is no longer filled with busy figures and the aroma of breakfast, but rather his own hustle and bustle. At over 80 years old, a time that should be enjoyed has instead become a joke he lives out. Around 10 o'clock, the chill of the night came uninvited. Daniel walked out of the villa and headed towards the rental apartment. As soon as he entered, he was greeted by Misty's noisy live stream. "Family, my stepdad and my mom's married life is quite happy. No matter how old you are, you have the right to pursue happiness." "What? You want to meet my stepdad? Okay. If my family gets 1,000,000 likes, I'll bring him out. Every night, I have to cooperate with Misty's livestream. Unable to find peace. Both the son and daughter want to bring him out, but he doesn't want to trouble the kids. After all, the jokes he has caused are already big enough. Daniel sat in front of the camera like a tool, cooperating with Misty. Give my family a smile, okay? Do you say you are happy after marriage? He mechanically nodded. The public screen has all sorts of comments. This old man doesn't look very happy. Is he being forced? At 80 years old, still chasing after fun. I don't know what he's thinking. After the broadcast, Daniel returned to the bedroom, feeling an indescribable fatigue after a day out. Before he could lie down, Misty kicked open the bedroom door, furious. What do you mean? Is it so hard to smile in front of the camera for a moment? What use are you? The big villa isn't yours, and you still have to squeeze into a rental apartment with us. Who are you putting on a long face for all day? If you don't want to, you can leave. She had a look of disdain on her face. Daniel sat quietly on the bed, listening to Misty's scolding. Rose just coldly watched everything unfold. In the dimly lit room, her accusations and insults were incessant. He was angry yet helpless. The retirement salary card had already been given to Rose, and he could only take 500 yuan as pocket money each month. Even if it wasn't enough, she wouldn't supplement it for him. This was what he had to endure. The once soft and fragrant king-size bed, the sweet and delicious meals upon waking, had now all become a past he could only long for. Time had passed, and those beautiful days had all been ruined by his own hands. Misty finally stopped the cursing. Perhaps she was tired. He could finally have a moment of peace, lying in bed, holding a pocket watch that Sandra had given him when she was young. That year they had just gotten married, and their life was incredibly simple. Every meal was just a bowl of clear noodle soup and a few pieces of green vegetables. Yet, Sandra managed to save some money from this extreme simplicity to buy him a pocket watch as a gift for starting his job. Her feelings for him were never spoken aloud but were hidden in the subtle details of life, the days of poverty yet unwavering companionship, the honey water in the cup, the plain porridge in the pot, the ironed clothes, and the reminders on the sticky notes by the bedside. He lost all of these. In his longing for Sandra, Daniel slowly fell asleep. That night he had a recurring dream, in which Sandra returned to the age of 20, wearing a pure white dress, with braided hair and clear eyes, saying, "Daniel, take good care of the children. Daniel, take good care of yourself. Sandra." Daniel rushed toward Sandra, only to grasp at nothing, as if the heavens were playing a cruel joke on him. Every night he tossed and turned in endless meetings, hoping to reunite in his dreams, even if just for a moment of warmth. But upon waking, he still faced the cold reality and endless longing. It was another dimly lit morning. Daniel sat up early. Today he needed to set off a bit earlier, as the medical school was still quite far from here. After preparing breakfast, he sat for a while until the sky began to lighten, and only then did Daniel step outside. Holding yesterday's brown paper bag and the cane that never leaves his hand, he boarded the No. 2 bus. The journey was truly long, a full 32 stops, and he even needed to transfer back and forth. Yet he felt not the slightest bit tired. Instead, he was quite spirited. Only the spot where he was kicked by Misty that night ached faintly. But none of this was enough to stop him from seeing Sandra. He even wore the Zhongshan suit he had on when he married her. It was just like when he was young, crossing half the city to meet Sandra. The journey was no shorter than it is now, but seeing the person he loved made all the fatigue disappear. The medical school in Haicheng is at the end of the city, with willow catkins dancing along the way and a faint floral fragrance filling the air. Daniel happened to walk into the campus just as the students were finishing their lunch break. As if awakening from a deep silence, the students surged out of the various teaching buildings like a tide, their faces beaming with ease and anticipation. They either walked joyfully in groups of 3 or 5, or rode bicycles along the tree-lined paths. Sunlight filtered through the gaps in the 4 drips, casting mottled shadows. Everywhere exuded vitality. He felt a bit happy, having so many lovely children around him, full of vigor. She would surely be happy too. After all, she had always been such a caring person. After finding the teaching office and explaining his purpose, Daniel quickly arrived at the human experimentation lab under guidance. Like a newcomer, he felt somewhat nervous, constantly adjusting his untidy collar. He walked all the way to a heavy and cold metal door, stopping in front of it, smelling a faint scent of disinfectant. He knew this was the human experimentation lab. The door hinge turned, and as each inch of space was illuminated, Daniel was captivated by one complete human skeleton, which radiated a faint, gentle glow. Once a vibrant life form, now only a skeleton could be seen. Just a glance at her was enough to feel content. Compared to her, I feel utterly ashamed to face anyone. Sandra was steadfast in life and continues to show her resilience even in death. Daniel was already in tears when he left. Students walking along the campus path frequently turned back, all curious about what was wrong with the old man. It took nearly 2 hours on the bus to get back, and it was already dark when he entered the house. Rose, with a long face, said, "Where have you been? You've been gone all day." "I'm not as easy to fool as Sandra," Daniel responded calmly. "At my age, there aren't that many things to worry about." "Ha, aren't you also at this age and unclear about things with me?" Not wanting to argue with her any longer, he was tired. No matter what the outcome of the argument was, it was meaningless, so he quietly entered the kitchen to prepare dinner. Seeing his indifferent demeanor, Rose became even angrier and started shouting from the living room. "Daniel, what do you mean by this? Don't you even want to argue with me anymore? Don't think I don't know what you're doing, leaving early and coming back late every day. Aren't you just avoiding me? I'll tell you, Sandra is dead, and you can't go with her." Daniel could no longer listen, grabbing the shovel and leaving the kitchen. What did you say?" Rose watched him storm out with a shovel, and she really jumped. "What? Are you going to hit me or what?" "Go ahead. Hit me, you, the old man said, unable to find words in his anger. He had never lost his temper with Sandra in their entire life together. He would never fight. It was only when pushed to the edge that he retorted a few words. He stared intently at Rose, his eyes filled with an unclear depth of meaning. Rose wanted to scold him, but seeing his expression made her worry that if she really struck him, she would lose control. Instead, she sat down on the ground and began to wail. "You old bastard. If you want to hit me, have some pity for me at over 70 years old, and still being hit by you." The sounds of wailing and cursing made Daniel's scalp tingle. When had he ever resorted to violence? To be so falsely accused? He clenched his fists, pressed his lips together, and forcefully suppressed the turbulent pain surging within him. "Rose, we're both at an age where if we're unhappy, we should just part ways." Rose's expression stiffened. She hadn't expected things to turn out this way. Daniel went back to the house to pack his things, which were really just a few pieces of clothing and a photo album. There were very few things in this home that belonged to him. He picked up his coat and walked towards the door. This was in the room when Misty quickly followed him out, saying, "Where are you going? I've already told you all. Do whatever you want, but you're not allowed to break up. I'm claiming this wave of traffic for myself. It's just one step away from leaving Hong." Daniel, after listening, glanced at the crazed Misty and ignored her as she put on her shoes. Misty snatched his package, and as the two of them tugged, Daniel was slammed against the door with a bang, slowly sliding down along the iron door. After a long time, neither Rose nor her daughter could come to their senses and stood there in a daze. No one stepped forward to help him up. After a while, Daniel's weak voice sounded, "Can you let me go now?" He struggled for a long time holding onto the doorknob before finally standing up, slightly lowering his head to look at the shadow illuminated by the light. His voice calm. "Rose, let's part ways amicably." Rose looked into his cold gaze, her heart tightening. She knew that the last shred of his feelings had been completely consumed. The sound of crying gradually transformed from soft sobs into heart-wrenching wails. Daniel, without a moment's hesitation, quickly opened the door. At the doorway, he collided with his son who had rushed over to see him. Meeting his concerned gaze, he could no longer hold back and fainted directly into his son's arms. Dad, what's wrong?" Daniel remained silent, while Rose and Misty exchanged worried glances in the room. Not daring to speak, When he opened his eyes again, it was already 3 days later. Everything before him was hazy, and he instinctively spoke up, "Sandra." No one had answered for a long time, so long that he thought there was no one waiting for him to wake up. Uncertain, he called out, "Sandra, Dad, you're awake." A clear voice pulled him from his daze. Sandra was long gone, and a self-deprecating smile tugged at the corners of his mouth. Slowly raising his head, both his son and daughter were gathered around the bed. The pain in his body was overwhelming. At over 80 years old, he was already fragile, having fallen twice, and coupled with his recent worries and struggles, his body was already like a bowstring stretched to its limit. The son and daughter had red eyes and said, "Dad, why didn't you tell us? You have children. We will never let you go back to that place again." Daniel opened his pale, dry lips, tears mixed with his smile. Okay, we are going home. Finally, after a year apart, Daniel returned to the small villa once again. His children had tidied up in advance, and everything had returned to its original state. The first ray of morning sunlight shone into the room, a familiar environment, a familiar scent. As he opened his eyes, he caught the aroma of rice. He forced himself to sit up. The daughter pushed the door open and said, "Dad, you're awake. Let's have breakfast." Daniel nodded with a smile, surrounded by his children at the table, one serving rice and the other picking up vegetables. Before long, the bowl was about to overflow like a small mountain, with steaming dishes filling the table, and the children showing their filial piety. Daniel felt a twinge of guilt in his heart, not wanting to trouble the children. In the end, it was still the children who took care of everything. This is the trouble he brought upon himself. When the children were small, their daily lives were all taken care of by Sandra, who also stayed up late to help them with their homework. Now that I am old, I have caused them so much trouble, just because of his momentary distraction. Seeing the children running around, Daniel felt a sudden sting in his nose. He hurriedly chewed his food, trying to mask the emotions that had come upon him. "I'm sorry." He finally spoke the words he had wanted to say to them for a long time. The children looked at their father's weathered face and emaciated body, tears streaming uncontrollably. "In just 1 year, I wonder what he has gone through." In order not to worry them, the father never made it clear to them. Every time he called, he spoke lightly. Since their mother passed away, they have also resented him, but his pain has never been less than theirs. Daniel has several bruises on his body. The doctor said that his body is no longer what it used to be, and it's uncertain how much longer he can hold on. "Dad, I will definitely not let them go. We have already done a medical examination on your injuries and are just waiting for the report." Daniel remained non-committal. After finishing dinner, it was just past 8. Daniel's daughter was clearing the dishes while his son sat with him in the living room. After a long-awaited moment of peace, the daughter tidied up the kitchen, brought over a pot of tea, adjusted Daniel's collar, and thoughtfully sat at his feet. Just like a year ago when she rested on Sandra's lap, De Huang was also lying at the gate, enjoying the tranquility of the moment. The children were all at the old housekeeping company, and Rose and her son didn't dare to disturb Daniel. On Sunday afternoon, as Daniel's son Oscar opened the gate, he saw Misty wandering outside, and she smiled cheerfully. "Big brother, where's Uncle Wang? My mom is still waiting for him at home. He hasn't come back for such a long time." With her eyes darting around, Misty stretched her neck to look into the yard, trying to find Daniel's figure. Oscar's anger flared up instantly. "How dare she come? You're just in time. How did you bully my dad? You don't even spare an 80-year-old man. It's truly outrageous. It's a misunderstanding. Big brother, I'm just like Uncle Wang to my mom. Moreover, my fans really like Uncle Wang. Please let him come back with me. I've never seen such a shameless person before." Oscar pointed at Misty and shouted, "From now on, I will take care of my dad's old age. You don't need to find him. Just get as far away from me as you can." Oscar's face was terrifyingly cold. Misty was scared. "You tell Daniel that I will come back. As long as he hasn't divorced my mom, he is still my stepfather, and he has to give me back." He ran away in a flash. Oscar was gasping for breath, his chest tight to the point of suffocation. Sure enough, it wasn't yet evening, and Misty came again, bringing live streaming equipment, while Rose looked pitiful beside her. Until they reached the villa door, Misty turned on the live stream, crying and accusing, "Family, this person who swore eternal love with my mom is about to abandon her. His son has hidden him in this house. My mom hasn't seen him for 4 or 5 days. We, as orphans and widows, cannot compete. Their family is powerful and influential. Who can stand up for my mom? Is it possible that having money allows one to toy with an old lady's feelings?" Rose was weeping beside her, truly a mother-daughter pair, both excellent at drama. Under their influence, the fans who originally supported this couple all stood up to denounce Daniel's family. Those nearby, along with a group of elderly people who had originally met Rose in the park, rushed over emotionally to help her seek justice. At one moment, the entrance was filled with people. "Rose, Misty, don't be afraid. With us old folks around, no one can bully you, right? I really don't believe there's anyone who can act with such impunity. Just married for less than a year and already going missing. It's simply immoral." Misty is live streaming across the internet, and there are voices of condemnation everywhere. The old man is still playing so flamboyantly. At such an old age, he's still shameless. He married a new wife right after the original one passed. And now, just over a year later, he's divorced again. Is he already with a new partner? Daniel and his family also saw the live stream in their room, and they were so angry that their hands started to tremble. They are simply spitting blood. Originally unwilling to pay attention, Oscar and his sister couldn't bear to see their father disturbed, so they first comforted him before stepping outside. No matter if it was wolves or tigers, they were determined to confront them. As soon as they came out, Rose immediately sat down on the ground, weak and crying uncontrollably. "You siblings, where have you hidden Daniel? Our marriage has witnesses, and you are forcibly tearing us apart." Misty also clutched Oscar's clothing, pleading desperately, "Big brother, for the sake of my mother's age, please let Uncle Wong go. Don't hurt them anymore." Under their embellishments, they successfully packaged themselves as victims. It's not just a reversal of black and white. They completely omit how they abused the elderly, only emphasizing that they hid Daniel. Rose and her mother, seeing that they did not respond, thought they had no way to deal with them, and anticipated that they would soon compromise. Crying even louder, people around pointed and spoke ill of Oscar and his sister. Oscar let out a cold laugh, shaking off Misty's hand. "Uncles and grandfathers, you have known my dad for a long time. You should be aware of his health condition. Ever since he married Rose, it has deteriorated rapidly. I originally thought my dad and Rose were childhood sweethearts reuniting, but it turns out she was only after my dad's wealth. Just a few days ago, I went to see my dad and found him in a dispute with Misty. Having been pushed to the ground, I fainted when I received the call. We only managed to save him after getting him to the hospital." Misty refused to admit that the person who originally supported her was wavering, hurriedly saying, "You're slandering me. Don't believe him. He's only hiding him for the sake of Uncle Wong's inheritance. If my mom were after Uncle Wong's wealth, why wouldn't she move into the villa instead of still living in a rental apartment?" Her words seemed to have an effect, but before the crowd could react, Oscar pulled out photos from Daniel's hospital stay, along with the injury report. In front of everyone, a series of bruised legs, some blue and some purple, were displayed, along with Daniel's weakened face, causing even the longtime neighbors to tremble with concern. Unexpectedly, the people they had just supported turned out to be beasts among men, capable of harming even the elderly. Those who had just been stirred by emotions suddenly woke up. These two beasts not only abused the elderly but also exploited their sympathy, which was truly despicable. Rose used online public opinion to create a scene of two elderly people reuniting with their first love, deceiving a large number of netizens who, unfortunately, wished them well and constantly followed this elderly couple. Everyone's anger levels skyrocketed. They are just disrupting the network and confusing the public. The internet was already filled with curses, and before long, Misty's account was reported and banned. Rose and Misty were completely panicked. She took a few steps back, facing the supporters behind her. "No, What he said is all false. The photo. Right. The photo is forged. With a loud bang, the door was opened, and Daniel's daughter appeared pushing a wheelchair in front of everyone. Now, Daniel no longer had the robust appearance he once did. The neighbors exchanged glances, startled, followed by a sense of pity. At this moment, there is no need to say much. Everything is self-evident. Countless fists and kicks were aimed at Rose Misty, striking this cruel mother and daughter, and the insults hurled at them were unbearable to hear. Wolves in sheep's clothing, venomous mother and daughter, along with the overwhelming tide of online abuse. Daniel's eyes were moist. He mourned for his own old age and regretted the mistakes he had made. Seeing him in tears, Rose felt that he still cared for her. Struggling to resist the fists and kicks coming her way, she crawled to Daniel's feet. She awkwardly hugged his thigh, saying, "Daniel, you care for me, don't you? I was just confused for a moment." "Tell them this isn't true. None of this is true." Daniel pried her hand apart and said slowly, "Let's get a divorce." He gave Rose no room to refuse, signaling for their daughter to push him back. He was finally going to divorce her. Even if he was to pursue Sandra, he should do so cleanly. Ha 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 ha. Rose was laughing maniacally, her face twisted into a grotesque expression, an ambiguous smile lingering at the corners of her mouth. "Daniel, do you think that by divorcing me, Sandra will forgive you? Long before you deceived her into meeting me time and again, her heart had already died. She will never forgive you. Do you remember when she came back from her trip and you went to tidy up the things in the house? Those were all things I deliberately placed there. I told her that love alone cannot make a couple, but without love, one cannot be lovers. Just think, she didn't even have a big fight with you. Her heart was already dead. Do you know why she chose body donation? She didn't want to share a grave with you after death. She wants to never see you again in life or death." Ha 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 ha. Rose, her eyes burned like fire, twisted from the depths of her soul, tears and sweat mingling together in a pitiful despair. Daniel, his body trembled, already resembling a ruin, teetering on the brink, while the surroundings grew quiet yet could not quell the storm within him. Everyone was stunned by her words. Misty also stood frozen in place, unable to speak. Only Rose remained with a bitter smile. "Let's go!" Daniel held back immense sorrow. The two light words fell into everyone's ears. His daughter pushed him through the door, and those outside left with a different kind of sentiment. But deep down, a pain akin to a wound being reopened and salted subtly throbbed. Since the end of this farce until midnight, Daniel sat quietly in the living room, gazing towards the front door. No one knew what he was thinking. His son and daughter urged him to rest, but he remained silent, allowing his children to make arrangements. Lying on the soft king-size bed, Daniel obediently closed his eyes. After turning off the light, the room was dark and oppressive, like an endless black hole. All along, he had never dared to admit that Sandra would never forgive him. Even if he suffered in Rose's home, he thought he was atoning for his sins. But no matter what, she would never forgive him. Sandra donated her body because she did not want to be buried with him. She hated him to the bone, and he had hurt her deeply. That night, no one could sleep. Oscar and his siblings were worried about their father. Should they check to see if he was up? Misty helped Rose back to the rental apartment, and all the loyal fans who had been with her turned against her. Seeing the red paint splattered at the entrance from a distance, vicious mother and daughter, abusing the elderly, scheming old fox, ruining the original spouse's late marriage. Every word pierces the heart. The landlord was already waiting at the door, saying, "I give you 1 week to move out of here. I would rather leave it empty than rent it to a morally corrupt mother and daughter." Misty held the trembling Rose. "We're not moving. Why shouldn't you rent to us? We've paid the rent." Behind them, the landlord was still chattering, telling them to leave. Misty and Rose slammed the door shut, cutting off all sounds from the outside. Rose seemed to have lost half her life. Even though the mother and daughter usually didn't get along, Misty couldn't bear to see her like this. "At your age, what are you playing at with true feelings? If you want to leave, just leave. It's not like you haven't done it before." The night is long, always accompanied by an indescribable loneliness, until the sky revealed a faint brightness. Daniel had already dressed and was sitting on the edge of the bed. The daughter was startled when she pushed the door open. "Dad, why don't you lie down a bit longer today?" Daniel calmly said. "I want to go see your mom again." The children looked at each other, unable to bear rejecting him. After breakfast, they drove straight to the university campus. With the company of the children, the journey was very smooth. Not having to transfer buses back and forth made things much easier. It was the first time for the siblings to come here. They had no idea what kind of struggles their father had endured on this road. It was still that metal gate. Daniel stood silently at the entrance, gazing at the familiar remains. Although it was no longer the physical entity of the warm embrace he once knew, it existed in another form, more sacred. The memories of the past struck him deeply once again, the gentle light reflecting a barely perceptible sadness in his eyes. As he stepped out of the human experimentation lab, his gaze became a bit more resolute. On the way back, the car was extremely quiet, with only the sound of passing cars outside. The children were deeply moved by their mother's greatness. When the human body was given another meaning, the mysteries of life and immortality became even more touching. "I want to donate my body. If I die, I will donate my body. And if possible, I hope to also contribute to the medical school," the old man said with a voice that resonated with authority. The children have long been in tears. In this silent space, the great love is deafening. Daniel and Rose's divorce proceedings went particularly smoothly. Rose belonged to the domestic violence side, with ample evidence. Even the entire internet could testify for him. Daniel's life has already entered the countdown, with his children never leaving his side. Lying in bed, reflecting on his entire life, the one he felt most sorry for was Sandra, who he devoted his life to only to be betrayed. It turns out that waiting is so painful, and death is so quiet. On a sunny morning, Daniel fell into a deep sleep, burdened by guilt for Sandra, never to awaken again. Oscar fulfilled his wish to donate his body, and after much communication, Daniel also entered the human experimentation lab of that medical school. The two bodies are placed side by side, together showcasing the weight and greatness of life. The students of the school all know that there are two bodies that were married. One person donated their body for the other, specifically choosing this school just to be with her. There is a kind of love that, after enduring the test of time, transforms from youthful innocence to old age. Even though I have made mistakes and you refuse to forgive me, I still follow you all the way. If you wish to never see me again in this lifetime, I will remain by your side, praying for your forgiveness. Wait for me. I will personally apologize to you. Even if you do not forgive me, I am willing to always be by your side. Time seemed to stand still. Perhaps they would reunite in another world, continuing to write their love story. Maybe she still wouldn't forgive him, but this time he would never let go. Misty chapter. At this moment, Misty and her mother were almost like street mice, universally scorned. From being a popular internet celebrity with hundreds of thousands of fans, she was suddenly attacked by the entire internet. There were even emotionally charged netizens who frequently ran to her building to curse, shouting, "Shameless little mistress," and the venomous mother and daughter duo. The neighbors were unbearable, and the landlord always intercepted them at the door, demanding they leave. "You all get out of here quickly. I'm no longer renting my house to you," Misty coldly responded, shutting the door behind her as if she could block all attacks from the outside. She was unwilling to accept that those loyal fans, who her family had said would support her unconditionally, could give up so easily. Several times she tried to start a live stream, but all she received was a barrage of insults. Misty would sometimes lose her temper and argue with netizens in the live chat, but the next day, it would trend on social media, with even more insults. She never had any skills to begin with, and without the income from live streaming, life quickly became a struggle. Starving for 3 days and only eating every other meal forced her to start live streaming online to sell her misery, crying from the depths of her heart, "Family, I really know I was wrong. I grew up in an unhealthy family. My mother only cared about her own happiness and never asked about my childhood. My biological father? I have never seen him. My mom never allowed me to mention him. I really have no way out now. As long as you can give me tips, you can scold me however you want. I truly cannot live without this income. with a mix of truth and falsehood. Misty cried even harder. Since childhood, her mother had moved her from one place to another, always pursuing love. Misty had no friends because she never stayed in one place for more than 2 years. She thought life was like this, that everyone was the same, until she saw Daniel's villa, the warm yellow lights, the tidy courtyard, the poetic ambience, and her family gathered around. She realized that life could be so pleasant. She felt envious, wondering why she couldn't have a life like this. She knew Daniel's feelings for Rose, and instantly felt a surge of joy. If Rose married him, wouldn't she also be able to live in a big villa? The life of a little princess constantly appeared in her mind. In the morning, she wanted to sit in the living room, facing the blue sky and white clouds, sipping a cup of coffee. At noon, taking beautiful photos in the garden, and at night, lying on the soft king-size bed, falling into a deep sleep. Unknowingly, Misty let out a laugh, looking up at the narrow and dim rental apartment, and fell into a deep sleep. As soon as it was light, she urged Rose to go find Daniel. That old man hasn't come for days. Even Rose's messages to him went unanswered, as if he wanted to cut ties with Rose. That won't do. No one can stop her from moving into the villa. Rose came back shortly after going out. Just by looking at her, one could tell she had been turned away. What a useless thing you are. Where are those skills of yours from years ago? Weren't you the best at seducing men? Rose lowered her head and sobbed softly. She already felt discontent due to Daniel's aloofness, and being mocked by her daughter made her feel even more humiliated. The mother and daughter temporarily gave up daydreaming and began their daily routine of early mornings and late nights, until they heard that Sandra had died. Misty walked briskly, her face beaming with joy. Sandra is dead. Daniel has become a lonely man, and she believes that with her mother's charm, she can win him over. So they knocked on the door, and when Misty truly entered the house, she was stunned. It was warm and spacious, just like the home she had always dreamed of. She has never had a fixed residence. Living here in the future wouldn't be bad either. She carefully examined the entire house, and her mind had already begun to make plans. But unexpectedly, Daniel seemed extremely sad. He completely ignored Rose's advances and insisted on driving them away. She has agreed to their marriage, so why is he still trying to deceive them? Humph. Just a few days ago, he was going to see Rose every day, and now he's acting all sentimental. He must be pretending. I wonder how long he can keep it up. Misty thought to herself as she and Rose began to wait at home. 1 day, 2 days, 5 days, 10 days. Many days passed, and Daniel not only didn't come, but he also didn't answer Rose's calls. They panicked and went to his door again. The surveillance camera at the entrance was glaringly obvious, and the door was tightly shut. Misty gritted her teeth and jumped up to remove the surveillance camera. Next time they come over, Daniel won't be able to disagree. By the third visit, Misty and Rose were fully prepared, with live streaming equipment, emotionally stirred netizens, and the damaged surveillance in the yard. Everything fell into place. He still wanted to refuse, but Misty threatened him with their children, and he softened, having no choice but to agree. Just when they were overjoyed and about to move into the big house, Daniel's son unexpectedly claimed the villa was his, and he wouldn't allow them to move in. She was so close to living in the villa, and she truly felt unwilling to accept it. Sandra was truly cunning. She managed to transfer the house to her son just before she died. Fortunately, by using the wedding as a pretext, the mother and daughter made a request to hold a grand wedding. She live-streamed the wedding of the two elderly people online and surprisingly gained a wave of good attention. Even though she had returned to the cramped rental apartment, she still didn't lose her temper, considering the heat of the moment. As time passed, the excitement faded, and she had to repeatedly bring out Daniel and Rose to stir up the heat in the live broadcast. Later, even their popularity began to wane. She was somewhat deranged. Every time she saw Daniel, she was filled with rage, all because of his incompetence that prevented her from moving into the grand villa. Endless fury filled her heart, as if a single opportunity could cause an explosion. That night they had a fight. He insisted on leaving, and Misty finally erupted. Not only did he prevent me from moving into the villa, But he also cut off my warmth. She kicked Daniel in the stomach, watching him lie there for a long time without getting up, feeling immensely relieved. At first, she worried that he would find someone to come after her, but for several days, he remained silent. Misty became even more unrestrained. After the first time, there was a second time. Finally, she was seen by Daniel's son, and she panicked. She was afraid of losing this cash cow and also afraid that their family would make her pay the price. She chose to strike first, inciting the neighbors and netizens around her to join in the attack against Daniel's family. Public opinion initially leaned towards their side, but Daniel's family surprisingly had him examined for injuries and took photos. Netizens were enraged, launching a frenzied attack against her and Rose. The internet was filled with voices cursing them. The neighbors around were also pointing fingers, and even the landlord wished they would move out immediately. Mingming's imagination was not like this. She just wanted a home, a place where she wouldn't have to move all the time. How could it turn out like this? Lying in bed, Misty was in tears. In her 40s, she had no stable job, no family, and even her live streaming had come to an end. She had regrets. Perhaps it really was her fault. Placing hope in others is always an unknown. Rose chapter. The next time she saw Daniel was in South Park on a morning. He was just as spirited as he had been in his youth. Memories that had been sealed away for so long quickly engulfed Rose. In the age of romance and dreams, Rose and Daniel were once a beautiful story together. But she ended up with someone from a wealthier family. Abandoning Daniel, Rose turned away resolutely. Daniel, he is a child of high-ranking officials. You want me to be happy, right? Love cannot be eaten like food. But while love is easy, marriage is hard to maintain. The so-called children of high-ranking officials turn out to be wastrels. It wasn't long before they went their separate ways. They kept moving, and the days of raising children alone were difficult, until she met Daniel, whose eyes couldn't hide their joy, perfectly matching her heart's desire. What does having a family matter? True love is invincible. Time and again, the provocations at her doorstep, the ambiguous hostility. Sandra transitioned from confrontation to silence. A woman's sixth sense told her that Sandra was disappointed in Daniel. Her heart was filled with joy, using the excuse that Misty was not home and her chest hurt, repeatedly inviting him to visit her. The misunderstanding between Sandra and Daniel has grown larger. Daniel has started to deliberately take a detour to South Park every morning to have breakfast with her. Sandra is not asking. It wasn't until Sandra ran away from home that Rose convinced Daniel to let her stay at his house. The dressing table was completely filled with her toiletries, and the pajamas were neatly arranged on the bed, making her presence in the room even more intense. Sure enough, when Sandra returned, her face turned green at the sight of the room's arrangement. Though she didn't speak, Rose knew that a sandstorm was raging in her heart. When Daniel entered the room, he was also taken aback. Rose noticed that Daniel's brows were furrowed with a hint of anger, fleeting and hard to detect. She knew that Daniel had seen her carelessly place Sandra's things on the floor. He had told her not to touch anything inside. Those things belong to Sandra. She doesn't like anyone touching her stuff. You can just stay for a while. Daniel reminisced about the beautiful moments with her, yet he found fault in everything about her. Sandra wasn't around, and he was always gloomy, sighing and lamenting. Rose, in an effort to make him happy, took the initiative to sing kunku opera. As she sang, he chimed in, almost making her feel that this was her comfortable and happy life in her later years. But Sandra has returned, and Daniel is smiling, a look she has never seen before. She is driven mad with jealousy, wondering why she can have Daniel, why Daniel has a happy family and lives in a luxurious villa. She wants to take everything that should belong to her. So she deliberately said those words to provoke Sandra. But gradually Daniel became distant from her, not replying to messages or making calls. She didn't understand why. She took the initiative to visit, but Daniel actually drove her away, even telling her not to contact him again if she had something to discuss. Rose panicked. She glared fiercely at Sandra, blaming her. Otherwise, with her around, Daniel would never treat her this way. Returning to the dull rental apartment, her daughter even mocked her. Having followed her around since childhood, she neglected her own youth. and Misty's personality became extremely fragile. Every time Misty spoke harshly, she silently endured it. All her anger was directed at Sandra. If it weren't for her, Daniel would surely reconcile with her, and Misty could move into her dream villa. Until that day, Misty returned home beaming. "Mom, I heard that Daniel's partner passed away. Your chance has come." "Really?" Rose and Misty hurriedly rushed to Daniel's house, explaining their intentions, but Daniel still wanted to drive them away. She didn't understand why he still had this attitude when Sandra was already gone. All her unwillingness turned into hatred. When Misty revealed the plan to her and forced Daniel to marry her, she agreed. On that day, the drums were loud and festive. The happiness she had longed for in her later years, along with the big villa that Misty had hoped for, was about to be realized, and joyful ripples gradually spread in her heart. She laughed freely, waving her hands in front of the live camera. After everyone had dispersed, when she and Misty were carrying their luggage to move into the villa, Daniel actually said the villa wasn't his, and Sandra had already transferred the house to his son. Sandra, what a powerful tactic. It felt like a bucket of cold water poured over her head, extinguishing the fire in Misty's eyes, and she sulked back home, the illusion of happiness shattered. As Daniel came and went every day without a sound, indifferent to everything about her, the warmth of past inquiries seemed to vanish with Sandra's passing, and along with it, the light in his eyes faded away. In the cramped rental apartment, each of the three harbored their own thoughts. Misty's occasional madness, Daniel's gloom, all drove Rose to despair. She saw from the cabinet that Daniel had brought back the folder, which was the resting place of Sandra's remains. So that day, she followed Daniel all the way to the laboratory corridor. Daniel's melancholic old age made her heart tremble. The beauty of first love had long been erased in the slow passage of time with Sandra. What he could never forget was the person who shared his pillow. Perhaps for her, it was just a fleeting distraction in the monotony. In the end, they still got divorced. How long could a stolen happiness last? A few days later, she heard from a neighbor that Daniel had also passed away. He chose body donation as well, and they were forever placed together in the human experimentation lab. Even in death, he wanted to be with her.